Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, or maybe even it's evening for you. I think we have an audience from all over this planet, which is great. My name is Kars. I'm the product marketing manager of Foodbytes, and we're now trying out this new concept where we want to have experts that talk about a certain subject, and do that, for example, in a webinar. This is the first time we are doing this in this new concept. Also, the first time with teams, so we might have some hiccups. Yeah, we're still finding out as well how this works. But let's
so
start.
far, so good. Yeah.
Yeah. So far, so good. So I want to introduce to you Arjen van Wijk. He's managing partner of Cibus Nexum, and he's an expert in upscaling, agile upscaling for startups. I think it's very valuable for startups, but also for corporate and innovators, because they can see the bottlenecks where they are with. This session will be recorded. I will do it directly. So you can watch it back. We will send it afterwards as well, and we'll put it on the platform. Yes, I think it's recording now. So that's great. If you have questions, you can ask them in the chat or Q&A. Also, depending how many, Arjen can't look on anything, like can't keep an eye on them. Sometimes I will stop him probably to ask the questions. So I think that's it. Arjen, are you ready to take the stage?
Yes, great. Thanks, Kars, for the introduction as well. I'm happy to be here to share my experiences, pitfalls, tips, suggestions, but all kinds of relevant stuff around upscaling brands, products, innovations. Well, the reason why we also arrange for these type of sessions in groups is that a lot of companies, especially the smaller ones, well, deserve to know these messages, right? They deserve to know what's happening on the roadmap to launching a successful project or innovation. In this case, 100% focused on the manufacturing side of things. So scaling up your concept, your idea from the kitchen to commercialized industrial size production environment. And all the changes that will come along with that. We'll talk about it in this webinar. Also, the challenges, the pitfalls, the differences between building your own factory or most logical, start with an agile model of contract manufacturing or manufacturing partners to support your launch. So really keen on this session, sharing this with you as well. Also great to see that a huge number of people are joining this webinar. I think for me personally, it's the highest percentages of attendees from registration, which is great. Well, I think we're off to go. Just starting by some little introduction from myself, but also from the presentation and the session for today. It's all about agile upscaling. It's, let's say, the motto we use to support startups and scale-ups in their journey when it comes to the upscaling part of manufacturing. So my name is Arjen van der Wijk. I'm one of the owners and founders of Cibus Nexum, or in Latin, Cibus Nexum, which is Latin for food and connection. We founded our company 4 years ago, and this year we're laying the foundation for further growth as we're expanding our team, since we can't handle the projects anymore ourselves, which is good. It's a luxury problem. Anyway, the goal for today, on the total supply chain, on the total manufacturing side of things, is to create some awareness for you. And there might be some interesting topics which you're not even aware of in this stage, which on the roadmap towards successful launch will definitely be there and will be happening. So creating awareness of manufacturing, or let's say the main and topics around arranging the right supply chain around your company, or depending on the client of you. And tell you all about co-manufacturing, and also share some background and tools to help you along the way in this journey. And of course, well, to have an interactive discussion, unfortunately, that's not going to happen because we have too many people attending and it will be too much to handle all these individual questions. However, Kars will be monitoring the Q&A, so please, if you have something to ask, put it in the chat briefly, and we'll push the pause button to answer those. And well, let's see how it goes. So
Yeah.
I prepared this slide. Sorry, Kars, you would like to add something?
Yeah, you can just put them in the chat, or there's a Q&A section where you can add and also comment. So
Yep.
you can just put them there.
Great. Thank you. So what I try to do, we have different, let's say, angles of approaching clients and people of interest. That can be small startups, that can be corporate companies, that can be food manufacturers. But for this webinar today, I focus on high growth scale-ups. Why high growth? Well, they have a really ambitious plan towards launch, development, huge funding, or limited funding, but still the ambition to have a fantastic innovation to bring to the market. So what might be then challenges you are facing as owners, founders, operations responsible, CEOs, COOs? I've listed a few here. So in general, the go-to-market strategy, and not just the commercial one, also the manufacturing thing. So how does the supply chain look like ultimately when providing your product? Is it a consumer product? Is it a B2B ingredient? A make or buy analysis is a really important one. And do you have, let's say, a core technology you would like to keep in-house, and how to arrange that together with other maybe co-packers taking care of next steps in the supply chain. Of course, the topic around agile upscaling with co-manufacturing / pilot facilities, finding manufacturers. There are quite some tools and platforms out there, but also the method we are using in our projects to support clients. And I think also a really important one is the securitization of your intellectual property. So how do you deal with all the innovations that you have created, and you don't want to, let's say, call it out and tell every detail to a co-manufacturer, because this is one of the most crucial topics ultimately in collaborating with manufacturers externally. Let me make a small note here. So moving to the next page. The program for today is consisting of 2 blocks. The emphasis will be on block number 1. So it's the general introduction of the roadmap to launch. The second block is around the methodology, the go-to-market strategy, how we perform projects. And I will take you along the route of a project from the design stage until actually the launch of first production. And what are the steps, the pitfalls, the tools, and all the relevant things necessary and involved in those steps. But as I said, the emphasis will be on block 1. I think I will go through block 2 a little bit quicker, but there are some relevant slides in there to mention. So a little personal background about me, considering myself a Swiss Army knife in agile upscaling and food innovation launches. This slide is a combination of my personal background before we started the company, but also some clients from Kibbutz Nexum in the past 4 years, for which I have managed those projects. So quite some big corporate companies, but also very interesting and amazing journeys I have experienced the last years with the scale-ups like Formo and Project Eden and Black Sheep, coming from the US, by the way. So really interesting journeys those companies are on, to jump on the riding train and to witness that not just building an innovation, but also building a company. It's really fantastic to do that. So what about Kibbutz Nexum or Kibbutz Nexum? We're located in the Food Valley region in the Netherlands, quite central, and it's close to the Wageningen Food University. As I mentioned, it is Latin for food and connection. It's not only the only thing we're doing, making the connections. It's part of our entire project, so the matchmaking thing. But I think the emphasis will be more on the design upfront to support our client in the best setup of their manufacturing design and setup. So looking at our company itself, Kibbutz Nexum, we have done projects for clients mentioned here. Some are on the side. They are to be put on the slides once we have finished the projects. But until we still pending in the project. Because of confidentiality reasons, we will not put them on the slides yet. So these are actual projects closed with these clients, and same applies for the startups and scale-ups mentioned on this slide as well. So then a couple of examples of Dutch small startups that we're supporting as well. And then a few examples of projects that we have been doing in the past. I can only show here the consumer packaged goods like this hazelnut paste, or the plant-based chocolate drink from Friesland Campina, or the plant-based ham and bacon from La Vie from France. The Good peanut butter, maybe someone will recognize this, is a product that we have been executed from the beginning until the end-to-end project, including recipe development and contract manufacturing setup. And it's now being sold in a few thousand retail stores in the US, and manufactured in the Netherlands, by the way. So this is a mic drop. This is a signal for me to shut my mouth and maybe to answer some questions if there are any. If not, I'll just continue talking. So Lars, do we have already some questions so far?
No, not so far.
Well, we didn't touch any topics relevant for
No.
the audience, right? It's only about me. Nevertheless, we'll get ready for block number 1. So it's all about, let's say, doing an introduction to Agile upscaling. Then have a look at your story, your purpose of the company, your brand, your innovation. And then smoothly going to the challenges that come with upscaling, also touching your audience. So what is the typical client that you provide your ingredient for, and how does the supply chain and manufacturing setup look like? So these are the topics we will discuss for at least the coming 30 minutes. Starting with that, the roadmap to launch. We recognize quite some relevant topics over there, like for instance, the target pricing on the left. Is it ambient, fresh, maybe chilled product? The volumes, the SKUs, the recipe. All these topics on the left, which are relevant for you, resonate with the manufacturing capabilities or requirements on the right side for co-manufacturers. So if you're having a certain volume and number of SKUs in mind, it directly relates to the minimum order quantity or the minimum production quantity of a manufacturer. And there are quite some topics which are in balance with the manufacturing side of things. Not only a co-manufacturer, also if you would have a own manufacturing site or your own factory, this is relevant to acknowledge and to know what the dynamics is in this balance. So at the end, we will end up with a proposition from your side and interest from the other side. You could consider this as a, let's say, exploration with a client to sell your product. It's also our experience that you want to sell and have a good narrative, want to sell your story to a manufacturer to make them also interested, to appeal to them, to get their interest and engagement. So it's all about the balance of your requirements, your wishes, and the capabilities and the limitations on the side of manufacturing. This is a tool we use quite often when it comes to determining the stage where an innovation or a company is in. For instance, the first part, really the basic research and ideation, where at the end you will end up with a proof of concept, which is then being made at a laboratory or a really small scale kitchen or pilot facility. Next stage could be development of the application and further validation, ending up with a commercial product, which then at some point in time might end up with a CDMO, maybe a pilot facility, maybe a laboratory facility at a contract manufacturing organization. And ultimately, we're ramping up volume. We're increasing the volume and we are expanding, for instance, the number of products. We are expanding the volume, the region, and so on. So we are ultimately working towards a mature production, stable production, where it's important that you have a consistent quality after several instances of production. An important part of this journey in the design stage as well is the difference between investment in your own factory and the advantages on the other side of co-manufacturing, where in the case you have to buy equipment, first of all, it will take a year before it's there. And you have to design it, you have to buy it, it has to be installed. And then you're fixed in capacity for a couple of years. Where with co-manufacturing, you might already start in the beginning after a few months with exploring collaborations, and within 6 months, you are already ready to go with production. It can be on a small scale. Of course, it's important to find the right partner who can also handle the small quantities, but you're much more flexible and agile in your operations. For instance, a co-manufacturer may operate with one shift, and if you're doubling the volume, maybe they can double the shifts as well without having additional equipment needed, because they simply utilize the equipment they have with additional people. So the money that is remaining, you can put it in product development, marketing, team building. You don't have to put it in stainless steel of your own factory. So another interesting thing about the other side of let's say, the make or buy assessment is an example of a Dutch startup who recently decided to build their own factory instead of expanding their business with co-manufacturing. This is quite recent. I think it is 1 month or two ago. And I'm really curious about where they're heading with this strategy, and for what range of products they can apply this product. But at some point in time, your volume, your brand, your production is quite big, and maybe it's worth considering then to insource it and build your own factory if the volume is significant enough to build that business case. So what is co-manufacturing? And I also mentioned here the word co because for me personally, it means all about collaboration. So it's not just tolling, right? You send over your goods, they do their magic, send it back, send an invoice, and then that's it. No. If you're engaging with a startup company as a manufacturer, you also ask yourself, okay, what's in it for me? And an interesting thing happens after 2 years or 3 years, when after the initial struggles and small volume launch, the volume is picking up, and then it's becoming interesting for the manufacturing. So that requires collaboration to get to that level. So I don't want to talk about external manufacturing or just a supply relationship. For me personally, it means a collaboration, so co-manufacturing. You may have heard quite some words around this topic. There are numerous ones. So as said, we prefer the word co-manufacturing, but we have quite a different range. I think the above 6 bullets are all the same. It's all referred to outsourced production with a partner. Then there is a difference with tolling and co-packing. Co-packing is a company may do some changes or blending on mixing with your product, put it in a nice packaging and send it back. That's a little bit less activity than co-manufacturing because there's no development involved or less development. Tolling is actually the basic version. So you send over your product, they do some magic and send it back. That could be the question that you sell it to them and they sell it back, or you provide it to them and you only pay for the conversion cost. It's a major difference, by the way, also when it comes to risks and insurances. Then CMO, CDMO is all about contract development and manufacturing organization, comparable to co-manufacturing. And the ultimate stage of contract manufacturing or collaboration is with royalties/license contracting. And I have a nice example of that because this is the Milka brand, well known from Mondelez. It's their own brand, and they engaged with Arla Foods to produce and distribute this new chocolate drink of Milka. But the interesting thing is, it's not just about the distribution and the production, it's also on the marketing. So this is an example of a brand not doing the marketing, but the manufacturer/producer is also taking care of that part. So that is the ultimate, let's say, collaboration, next level collaboration with co-manufacturing. So I would like to summarize a few advantages of co-manufacturing. And you see the question mark over there, because while I'm discussing this slide, maybe you have thought about some advantages yourself also of co-manufacturing, if they not appear on this slide. I'm curious to hear from you. First of all, we don't need capex. You don't need to put your money in stainless steel, and you can free up your capacity and money, of course, to develop your company. Then the part of flexibility and agility, having a great advantage in speeding up the time to market. Then the scalability part as well, when it comes to the flexibility of the co-manufacturing in terms of volume to adapt to your growth. And don't underestimate the external knowledge and R&D resources they have, because they can fine-tune and, well, take care of some final steps when it comes to the fine-tuning of your concept and processing. And that's also a very relevant topic I will touch later as well. When you have your concept ready from laboratory or kitchen, a lot of things will change moving to industrial environment, and these companies have that experience. For example, a simple step like spray drying as a drying method to reduce the moisture and to create a powder ultimately, that will go completely different than perhaps you are using the equipment with a vacuum oven in your kitchen. So rely on their R&D resources and expertise to, let's say, do the final step in your industrialization. Budget control and saving on resources. Having your own factory means also you have to have your own operators. You have to have your own system in place, your own certification of producing and supplying products. And that's an important one, certification of co-manufacturers. They have that in place already. You don't have to bother about that because they are dealing with that and make sure they have BRC, IFS, FSCC, kosher, halal, organic, whatever. So that went quite quickly. Curious if there are any remarks from the audience.
Yes, if you have any questions or remarks, you can put them in the chat. Feel free to do so, but I don't see anyone typing. All right, Gabriel. Can we?
Nice way to check the interactiveness with the webinar tool, Cars.
Yeah, I can now. Gabriel, you can also talk. Yeah, we hear you.
Thanks. It's a pleasure to be here. Good morning from Costa Rica, but it's probably afternoon there. Very interested. You mentioned, Ian, about when you already launch, and then there's introduction of new products. When you start a business, in your experience, do you already have mapped these new products, or you develop them on the run?
What do you mean within our company when it comes to developing? Because we are not a manufacturer ourselves, we are a consultancy company. How does it relate to your question, Gabriel?
Okay, you mentioned at the beginning of this when you started that certain steps, and there's okay, you're going to launch so many SKUs, and
Yeah.
you start the market with that, and then you mentioned about the development or inputting new products, or after your initial SKUs. So my question is, in your experience, those new products that you will launch, do you develop them on the run as you see the market responding and stuff, or you already have had them mapped in your previous project before launching?
Yeah, I understand. Thanks for the clarification, Gabriel. Well, most of the time it is already mapped up front by our clients because they have an ambition of launching, for instance, a wide range of products. And ultimately, that's not going to fly when the volumes typically are being low in the beginning. So the plans might be there, but our advice would be in the beginning to start with maybe not 8 SKUs, but 3 or 4 different flavors. Make sure that you get the traction on the market, build your brand awareness, and at some point in time, introduce the other flavors in collaboration with the manufacturer. And that gives a little bit more flexibility on the beginning, but increases your volume when it comes to the initial collaboration with the manufacturer. I'll come back to that later as well. So it could be both ways, right? I have a client now as well in the Middle East. She also, when we are executed this project, she also said, wow, I want to have this flavor and this flavor. I said, okay, wow, that is great. But still, we have to consider the minimum production quantities at a manufacturer, because if you start quite low, the price is extremely high, or at least that could be. I hope this answers your question a little bit, Gabriel. But I'll come back to that volume topic later on as well. Thank you.
And we have 2 questions more in the comments. 3.
Okay.
Mariana asked, could you please send us the presentation? The recording will be available afterwards.
Yes.
And then we have, what's the best way to find a co-packer for the area of food? We work with various co-packers, but they are limited to do various things. There's no co-packer that can create all things.
Okay. Okay.
Is that
no, that's
something?
that's quite a challenge. And that's also related to the topic of upfront, which I mentioned. They build their own factory. But the interesting thing is they have so many different type of products. I don't think they can do it in their own factory, but that's something different. The typical thing with co-manufacturers is they have their own specific experience, their own specific capabilities and factory. So what we often see is that a brand who has, for instance, a fruit drink concept, UHT or fresh pressed juice, and they want to launch an ice cream under the same brand. Yeah, obviously they can't do it in the factory because they are not an ice cream manufacturer. So you end up with a collaboration with a specific dedicated ice cream manufacturer. And unfortunately, there are quite a lot of different producers who have their own specific knowledge in specific areas. So if you're present in quite some different areas in the retail landscape or something, and you have different products like a drink, like a bar, like a yogurt, or like a muesli, you might end up with 4 different manufacturers. Yeah, that's correct. I know places where there are manufacturers who do quite a big range, but then maybe it's all concentrated around the same raw material. Like if you're having a raw material producer on oat, they can produce the mueslis, they can produce granola, but also maybe a drink out of oat. But maybe then they cannot do the almond, because almond is a completely different supply chain and it may not add up in their factory. So I hope this answers the question a little bit.
Great. And we also have a question from Alejandro, but we can also save it for the next round.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I will just continue with 2 slides, and it's on purpose and on audience. I will go through that quickly, but just mentioning that the positioning, your target audience and channel, the region, and your ingredients and process are really important when it comes to the upscaling part. A lot of things might be subject to change in the next steps. So for instance, a claim, just a simple example, if you want to launch something organic, you have to consider the price will go up. And there's quite a simple reason for that. One is the co-manufacturer has to take care of organic, separate storage of the ingredients to prevent cross-contamination. And they have a certain processing sequence producing organic products. Usually volume of organic is lower. So maybe they can only produce organic once every 2 or 3 weeks. And for instance, they start on Monday and the rest of the week they can do conventional. Because if they have to do it in between, that means an additional cleaning step, right? So organic is nice, but it adds more complexity. So you have to have a premium positioning of your brand or innovation to afford, let's say, an organic claim. A simple example. Let me check on the next slide. Yeah, I'll just briefly talk about the different channels in which you would like to sell your product. It could be supermarket retail, it could be food service retail. Also out of home is a very interesting market when it comes to, for instance, convenience. But we also see a trend lately, and most of our clients are actually in that area, is that new startups initiatives will end just before the consumer. They don't want to bother anymore about consumer trends, the high volatility and, let's say, acceptance rate or not. They end with a very sophisticated B2B ingredient or platform, which might be used then in food service or in other corporate brands in compositions of their application development. So the region is also very important when it comes to, for instance, the shelf life. I'll come back to shelf life later on again, because if you're having a shelf life of 4 weeks and the retailer wants 3 of those 4 weeks, you have to produce every day. And in the case you deliver in the Netherlands, it doesn't make sense to produce in Italy, right? That will be a drama. So the culture, but also the region when it comes to, oh, sorry, I'm skipping too quickly. An interesting one is the direct to consumer online sales. So if you're based in, let's say, New Jersey in the US, and you want to sell your product on Amazon, but someone from Europe is buying it, what legislation is applicable to selling your product? Is it a US one because you're in the US? Or does the European consumer rely on the European rules of the product they're also buying online? Really important one. So this is an interesting one, because on the contrary of advantages of co-manufacturing, you also might face challenges in co-manufacturing. First of all, intellectual property. And that is most of the times always an urgent topic from clients or potential clients of us to say, okay, if I engage with a manufacturer, I'll lose my knowledge. Well, that's not the case. We can support in building models around that, of course, contractual obligations, NDAs, but also think about the setup of the supply chain, right? There are quite some companies, and we have helped quite some of them as well in designing the supply chain in such a way that, first of all, maybe they can produce a semi-finished product at one place or in their own factory, like a black box, and then engage with other manufacturers for the other processing steps like marinate, grill, pack, slice, dice, whatever, which are less complex, and that co-manufacturer doesn't have to know exactly the details of the processing knowledge of the first step. So there are ways to, let's say, secure IP in a pragmatic way, but also in contractual way. Another challenge I see is, of course, the volumes. I will come back to that later. Low starting volumes, but high ambition when it comes to the number of SKUs. And funding is a challenge. Some cases I ask my clients at the beginning, okay, do you have money? And not only to pay my bill, but also to pay for a co-manufacturer who has to do a trial. A trial can easily go up to 1,000 euros, 5,000 euros. Maybe you have to rent the whole facility for 10,000 euros. I've been in that situation before. You have to also buy raw material ingredients, because if they have a minimum test or trial run capacity of 3,000 kilogram, you have to buy 3,000 kilogram of ingredients. Are you capable of doing that? Do you have the funding and financial cash to make that next step? And an interesting one is sustainability goals might not be the same as the innovation of the startup, because we see quite some startups in the protein shift, of obviously reducing carbon footprint, which has an important sustainability aspect. A lot of manufacturers don't have that specific target on the agenda. They do as they are told, right? They are being approached by retailers, by brands, by startups. They just manufacture. Of course, they do their math, they do the calculation when it comes to scope 1, 2, etc., and the LCA. But the sustainability goals might not be on the same page. Okay, I have a question mark on the left. Kars,
Yes.
do we have relevant
So
questions?
we have some questions
Okay.
from Alejandro. How can we compete with price if we have to pay for a third party? That's
Well,
an
that's an interesting one. Yeah, that's a really interesting one, and we get that quite some time. You have to recognize that a co-manufacturer is, in most cases, more efficient than having your own factory. So besides the fact that they also have to earn money, they have their margin, they have their risk, surcharges, whatever. Usually the business model, especially in startup and scale-up size, is better and flexible, and in most cases also cheaper than building your own factory. However, and then we're coming back to the volume. In the beginning, when you have, for instance, 1,000 kilogram a month, and you want to ramp up to 1,000 tons a month, these 1,000 kilogram a month, initially, you don't want to consider that as purely the cost of a product compared to the margin. You want to also consider that as part of the research, because you're just starting. So if you have to pay €5 to a co-manufacturer per kg, and you can sell the product for €7, so it's nearly any profit in there. A big part of that €5 per kg for the co-man is not because it is the cost of your product. It's because if the volume is low. You have to have a different mindset on the initial volume, because it will definitely not calculate. It will definitely not run if you're only focusing on the margin right from the beginning.
Okay, answer. We have also a question, or two questions from Paul Boster. How do you leverage the benefits of achieving critical mass from a co-manufacturer that you would realize internally your own production facility? I don't know if you...
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's an interesting one, because there is always, let's say, this balance point in volume and the differentiation in products, which can let's say prove that better to go co-manufacturing, or that proves it's better to do it in-house. It's difficult to answer that question without knowing some context and background. So if there's any room left on the end, maybe we can jump on that particular topic.
Yeah. And his second question was, at what stage would you propose considering your exit, the collaboration, and invest in your own facility?
Well,
Maybe
that's
the same.
yeah, I touched it a little bit already. It's when the point comes that your volume is getting big enough and also justifies building your own factory. It has all to do about volume. But the interesting thing is with launching new products in year one, you are still, let's say, on premium level. You can charge €7 per kg. Maybe after 3 years, your volume is going up, but maybe because of price erosion and competition, your price per kg is going down. So we have to carefully watch momentum in the market, but also the volume. I've witnessed projects where a big corporate client of us has developed their own plant-based drink range, waited for 2 years to launch, and then automatically they were not in the premium segment anymore. Momentum was gone, and they ended up with 8 different other competitors in the same shelf. So the only choice there was to go down with the price and compete on price level, where still the quality was on premium level, and then you're missing the boat. Let's put it that way. So there's no answer to no one specific and good answer to that, but volume and yeah, of course, the turnover in the business is a very relevant one. But you don't have to invest your entire factory into the whole operation. You can also do a part of it. And let's say some specific components, when it comes to co-packing for some regions, you can do it with other companies and another location maybe. All right, here it is. The major challenge on minimum order quantity, or maybe the minimum production quantity. The balance between your total volume, let's say your volume of, let's say the total kg, but also the number of unique packs or unique formulas, really balances with shelf life, related also to technical and sensory aspects. But the combination of shelf life and SKUs determines more or less what the volume is you can deliver to your clients. If you're having a plant-based drink with a shelf life of 12 months, perfect. Then the volumes of production, let's say every 3 months, are at least 10,000, 15,000 liter, no problem. You can handle that. And you have production runs every 3 months. But if you're having a fresh product of 4 weeks and the retailer or food, the wholesaler claims 75% of the remaining shelf life, which is 3 weeks, then you have a remaining shelf life for yourself of 1 week. That means you have to produce every day. And if you're having a starting volume of 1000 kg per week, it doesn't make sense because the production quantity, the minimum batch size of a producer can't handle 10 kilogram. So you have to either increase the shelf life, so change from fresh to ambient, but it also affects, of course, your processing, or you have to increase the volume. Well, that's all not always possible in the beginning. The golden egg is somewhere in between. That means we have to find a balance in reducing some cases, the number of SKUs, increasing the shelf life has also to do with the economy factor, because still you can have a fresh product, but then with a shelf life of 60 days or 70 days using a retort system or autoclave system instead of standardized pasteurization, for instance. And the balance with the minimum production quantity. Maybe you would not engage first with a co-manufacturer, but with a pilot facility or a co-manufacturer who has a pilot facility and can use that food grade for delivering the first small batches. A very challenging one. And then another one is risk and cost. I just take the example of a peanut butter project that we have launched in the US. It's on the left-right corner, by the way. And just focusing on the component of roasted peanuts. So what happens behind the scenes? At least there are 8 components in the product of roasted peanuts. So the material itself, how are the crop results, how is the seasonal impact, how is the trading? All peanuts in the world are traded in US dollars. Don't ask me why, but it is so. What is the impact on processing? And for instance, also the energy used for the roasting of the peanuts. We have to maintain a good temperature and storage, otherwise you get molds in the peanuts. It negatively affects the shelf life. So there are quite an important bunch of aspects. And this not only refers back to cost in your total cost product, but also when it comes to risk, availability, volatility, and quality of your product. The reason why I'm putting this on the screen is You might ask yourself, if I have my own manufacturing site, I have the same challenge. Yes, you have. But the question is, what is the part that a co-manufacturer will take care, and what is it what you will do? You could have the situation that you start with delivering the roast peanuts from yourself to the co-manufacturer and say, I want you to use this source. Or that's the full co-manufacturing model. You rely totally on their knowledge, their buying power also, because that's another one that also added up to the question I heard before. Don't underestimate the buying power of a manufacturer because they have very good connections with all kinds of traders, sources, and so on. So that's the reason why I'm putting this slide. And this is one of the, well, most interesting slides capturing a lot of what we have been discussing before. Believe me, once you are shifting from the kitchen, the laboratory, a pilot facility maybe, to full-size industrial scale processing, everything will change. You will not purchase a few kilograms of oat on Amazon. They will have a trading or license agreement with the source directly in Finland. If you have, let's say, certain processing parameters of heating your product on the stove in the kitchen, the heating process, maybe with direct or indirect spiral heating in a factory or pasteurization, homogenization, will be completely different in an industrial environment. The quantities are higher, but the processing parameters are also totally different. And that's also the reason why in typical development stages, in our design stage of projects, we advise our clients to stop with their, let's say, fine-tuning the ultimate innovation at 90-95%, because you have to consider some changes once moving to a co-manufacturer or a bigger facility for production. A waste level is also an interesting one, because in your kitchen you have 0% waste, right? You use everything. In industrial environment, you have a lot of pipes, a lot of tanks, a lot of storage. And if you're having a very sophisticated factory, the lowest level of waste is around 2.5, 3.5%. That's normal. And if you have 2.5% of waste, that is quite smooth already. But if you start with low volumes and you have a 3,000 liter tank to start with, and there is 10 meters of pipe and there is 30 kilograms of waste in there, or maybe more, then the percentage of waste in the beginning can easily go up to 10%, 15%. And you might consider, okay, waste is not my problem. Yes, it is, because the raw material ingredients, you have to buy it as well. They're incorporated in your total cost of this maybe €5 per kg. So once the waste level is going down, the efficiency is going up, and that means your price per kg is also going down. So now we have done, let's say in 35 minutes, we have done block 1, which I think when it captures the most and the essential things when it comes to the roadmap from concept to launch. This is more about the detail of design, find, onboard, launch. That is our food flow method to support our clients really step by step to a successful launch. I will touch some slides in here, but first I would like to make some pause and to see if, considering block 1, we might have some questions which can't wait for the end. Kars.
Yeah, so I see already a question from Steve. What can we do if we want to try and partner with a manufacturer like Mondelez or Nabisco to have them invest and share cost? Then how to best try and pitch that to that companies? That way we would have resources ready for the partnership. So I think it's quite a comprehensive story that he's asked, but I think the essence is like, how can we partner with a bigger manufacturer like Mondelez or Nabisco?
Yeah, I think it's a very good question. We usually also in the design phase of the project, we will sit together in a workshop wise with our clients to specifically also talk about this topic, because it's not just about outsourcing your production. A lot of manufacturers, like for instance, a lot of private label manufacturers or maybe distributors, they have very good connections with the clients at the end. There's one client, it's really a food tech startup we are working with at the moment, and they have engaged with DSM-Firmenich as their single and sole distributor, which has an advantage because they are doing a massive exercise when it comes to the quality standardization and requirements of DSM-Firmenich. The disadvantage is that DSM-Firmenich is then the only one who can sell the product. Well, DSM-Firmenich, they have a very big network and I think a global reach of selling the product. But it's only one channel, right? It's then in that case an exclusive channel. So that's the first warning. If you engage with such a company like Nestle or Cargill or Mondelez, then you're, let's say, bound to the exclusivity in that relationship, not with the manufacturing only, but maybe also on the distribution side of things. So you might want to consider, if you want to be stuck in a collaboration for a couple of years with only one company, or you see potential in building your brand narrative and expand it to other regions and channels as well, where maybe Mondelez is not active. That could be the case. So there are quite some, well, not only practical stuff when it comes to exclusivity or limitations, there are also quite some legal and commercial implications for which I really advise to engage with a legal advisor, not me, because I know my limitations as well. We are not a legal support company. We can advise absolutely on how to engage and how to select and find which co-manufacturers, but really going into this detail when it comes to setting up licensing agreements, for instance, then we could also hire legal experts from the Netherlands, or you might want to engage with one yourself. I hope this answers the question a little bit.
Yes, great.
Thank you.
We have a question from Alberto.
Yeah.
I think we also briefly touched on that, but how do you protect your IP while collaborating?
Yeah, that's a good one. One of the IP topics, indeed, we have briefly discussed it, is carefully think about the right supply chain setup. So if you have a very specific technology which can be produced at one place, and that semi-finished product you can ship to another producer for co-packing or other treatment or distribution, then you can already have a split of intellectual property. Another one, of course, is making sure that both on confidentiality and exclusivity / non-compete, you have the right agreement in place right from the beginning. I think when it comes to arranging such agreements, it makes total sense to keep in mind that you can't always prevent that your ideas are being used at some way. So you might as well prepare for that and engage with a co-manufacturer who has interest in your concept. And it may sound negative, because you always have to be aware of the what's in it for me question from a co-manufacturer. But let's assume you want to launch your brand in the US, and this co-manufacturer is located in the UK or in the US for that matter. But you have an ambition to launching your brand into the US. The co-manufacturer may also use same or similar formulation or concept to launch their own product, maybe under white label construction, in another region or another channel, which may not definitely harm your own commercial roadmap, but it could also add up to let's say, increasing the volume of your production. So it is not always a very negative idea that a co-manufacturer is interested in your concept. The way, the topic is, how do you handle that in that collaboration? But please involve some advice or support in making sure that you're too late once you're, let's say, starting to share information.
Yeah, great. We have also a question from Anand, but I think we can save it for after the last part.
Okay.
Yeah, because we have
You're
still
welcome.
a small part to go, right?
Yes, we have still 10 minutes to go. I'm having a little bit time left afterwards, so no problem. But I'll quickly go through these 4 models in how we execute our projects. So first, the design stage. The food flow method is designing the supply chain and make a comprehensive product and briefing. The next stage is, most of the time, we find and onboard our our manufacturers anonymously. So the client doesn't have to be exposed in the initial outreach to 10, 20, 40, 80 companies that we are approaching. The purpose of the find phase is to come up with a validated shortlist of potential partners. Then onboarding is about 3 things: doing trials from lab, pilot to industrial size, screen the quality aspects of the co-manufacturer, and negotiate with a very detailed cost breakdown and prepare for a letter of intent to achieve the handshake in this stage. And then later on, the final one is the preparation of the first production run and the signed contract, including the service level agreement, tackling all the details and requirements that you and your client need to be back-to-back covered by the performance of a co-manufacturer. So some pitfalls in the engagement with co-manufacturers from brand, corporate, scale-up, startup point of view. First one is the rush to the co-man. We call it the rush to the co-man because at the tennis court, you have heard this fantastic name of this producer somewhere nearby. Turns out fantastic until 6 months later, the price is too high. And then what? Then you have to redo your work 6 months back in time, all for nothing. So we have a more thorough approach there to find at least a short list of 3 options. Why 3? Because you're picking one for the onboarding stage, and then you still have 2 left when it comes to future upscaling, benchmark situations, or maybe another region where you can use the supplier. So that's never a waste of time. And believe me, it's not, you don't need 6 months to find one. The projects usually we are executing, including design and find, is around 2 to 3 months. So a no fit with a producer on volumes or recipe. This is also blocking progress quite sometimes. When there are high expectations on producers who can simply run a trial of 30 kilogram while their initial starting batches start with 1,000 kilogram, for instance. High expectations to lead time to launch. This is also an important one where co-manufacturers, you have to deal with a certain lead time when their R&D people are available in a couple of weeks, or their first production slot is available to do a trial in 2 months from now instead of next week, right? Narrow specifications is a very important pitfall, especially in the case where you have designed fantastic innovations, but with very specific ingredients, with a very specific treatment from a very unique source in the middle of Indonesia, I don't know, and also organic. Then you're making yourself really complicated in handling the options or being open for options at manufacturers. Well, ingredients. Unclear Q&A requirements as well. When you're approaching co-manufacturers, they have already a certain set of certification capabilities. It could well be that your client is asking for other things, or yourself. There might be a mismatch. So I'd like to highlight this slide when it comes to the design of the supply chain, because choosing the client depends, of course, on your proposition, but also determines how you would like to design the supply chain. Do we need a frozen co-manufacturer? Do we need a warehouse in between? Is it then chilled, maybe? Or is it delivered frozen to the retail, and then in the retailer it is being defrosted into a chilled selling? So you can also sell it chilled directly from the co-manufacturer, skipping the warehouse to food service client, or we have an optional route from your own pre-finished, semi-finished goods to the food service clients directly. So how these lines are going, and also the differences between chilled, ambient, and frozen have a major impact on shelf life and the setup of transportation and where your ultimate location of co-manufacturing will be. And this is an important one, a number of scenarios on co-manufacturing. So we have, I think, 6 to 7 different steps from develop to distribute. And for each and every step, you can say, okay, I want to do this by myself, or I want to hire an expert to do this. And in some cases, the full ex-co-man in this case is the most common one, where the development and sourcing are hybrid. So you can collaborate with the co-manufacturer, and then the preparation, processing, and treatment is being done by the co-manufacturer themselves. And maybe the distribution can be a hybrid model as well. The producer or a third-party logistics provider, or maybe you directly. So there are quite some different models in how to collaborate with external producers. We have 2 minutes left, Kars. I think these were the essentials of the slides I would like to show. There's a lot more, but it's going more into depth about the scouting process and, for instance, the co-manufacturing response and how what are the questions they're asking. But let's keep it as it is right now.
Yeah. So maybe we need to make a part 2 for that.
Yeah, we definitely do. I've done this webinar before in November, and we have split these blocks into separate webinar sessions, each 1 hour. Then there was also a little bit more time to engage and have nice discussions. But I appreciated the questions we have now. Are there still some questions left? Because I'm happy to answer.
Yeah. There is one question from Anand. He works for Ordertron, that's food and beverage distribution software. And I'm curious to understand, what do companies look for in an order management software to start selling? So I think, do you know the answer on that, maybe?
No, I have to be honest on that. That is not our cup of tea in the business that we are doing. We do have connections with a lot of, let's say, retail, export, distribution partners. So happy to make connections over there, no problem.
Yeah. Yolanda asked, could we share the presentation? Yes, it is recorded, so we will send the recording afterwards. Juliana asked, what is the common timeline for first contact with co-manufacturer to launch the product?
Well, a common timeline, when I look back at the process that we are doing, and then I'm putting it back on the screen for a moment, is the design and find stage. It takes around, the design is about 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. The find is usually 2 months. The most critical point is where we have reached the onboarding stage, the end of the onboarding stage. That means we have a handshake on samples, on quality, and on price, the basics. And that is usually within 6 to 9 months. Can be quicker, but we have to keep take into account that it's not up to us, because I want to onboard a co-manufacturer within 3 weeks. The thing is, it's all about lead times. Sometimes you have to wait for raw material to be there. You have to wait for a time slot to be available to do a trial. You have to wait for people who are available. So it's not about just the time you spend on a product. It's also the lead time for certain steps, lead time for packaging material, lead time to have the design ready and the packaging printed for you can also take 3 months, right? So the example I mentioned on the peanut butter project, that was 8 months from just pure concept, nothing on the paper, until first shipped container. It took us 8 months. So including negotiations, contract, service level agreement, and also the recipe development, co-manufacturing search, trials, etc., etc. So that was quite comprehensive and also really condensed. I think when we compare that to large companies and large corporates, they easily take 12 to 24 months. We're now engaging also on strategic level with quite some corporate companies on assessing their beyond the core or future core innovations. And it takes ages. They really take years to launch new products. It's unbelievable. While these typical startups that we support, they want to launch within 9 months. Just do that. They build the company in 9 months, and they also launch the product in 9 months, for instance. So that's nice. Nice to see. Okay, I hope this answered that a little bit. Any more?
Not a question. A lot of thank you. And also from Anna Rolling. She found it very useful. Only the key problem is we're working with agri-food startups in Africa, and there you have very low or very few co-manufacturers across the continent.
Yeah.
So there was a comment from her.
Yeah, that's correct. I understand the comment. We also recognize that from Africa, the Middle East, brands, clients tend to use European manufacturers because they know the quality. They are the price level can be higher, but still in a lot of cases they prefer European produced products instead of Asia, for instance. But we recognize the situation in Africa, which is the number of producers we have in Europe is the biggest one, maybe much bigger than in Africa. Correct. I saw another question popping up.
Yeah, so what's the cost of engaging you for onboarding a co-manufacturing?
Well, I don't have a general answer available that, but let's engage after the meeting to find a solution for the specific situation, because we have to be honest, finding a co-manufacturer is not something that we just provide. We don't share a list. And what amount should I invoice for sharing a list of 3 manufacturers? maybe they can produce what you need, but do they all have also the right connections to the retail, or do they have the right quality certifications? I don't know, right? We have to dive a little bit more into detail to make sure that we provide the right suggestions and approach the right companies as well. So if I say I have to sell a list, well, that's not what we do. There are a lot of platforms out there like Torg, like Wabel, Needle, Growinco, which can provide CPG co-manufacturing names in an instance. No problem. That's not our job. Our job is more on more tailor-made processes which require not simple manufacturers, but a really well-designed setup for supply chain and producing. But happy to engage on that topic and to see what the options are.
Okay, great. I think those were the questions. Yeah, like we said, this was the first time, so happy to hear your feedback. We will send an email after you because we're also curious what you think and maybe what subjects you want to answer next time. So thank you all for listening. I see
that
you
was
next
amazing.
time.
Yeah, looking forward to that. Thank you everyone for joining the session. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.